Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining us for our webinar tonight. We're going to be talking about the special needs program. My name is Erin Jansons. I am the special needs recruitment and placement coordinator at Let It Be Us. And I'm going to talk to you tonight about this great new program that we are working on to build up our repertoire of foster families who are ready, willing, and able to help take placement of youth with diverse medical and developmental needs. If you have questions as we go tonight, you can go ahead and pop those in the Q&A box. I think Kate mentioned that in the intro. And if I don't get to them as we go, we will make sure that we get to them at the end. So you will have all your questions answered. As I mentioned, my name is Erin. I have been a foster parent since 2018. We are licensed for ages 0 to 18, but it worked out mostly that we have had little ones in our home, almost 20 little ones who have been through with us. And let's see, I myself have a traditional license. Prior to this journey with foster care, I was a social worker, and probably like a lot of you, I was called to foster care for what felt like most of my life, and finally got to a spot, however many years ago, that I was able to take that first step. And for a lot of you, I know that's why you are here tonight, to take that first step. Makes me think of the Chinese proverb that, the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. And I know a lot of you, this is that first step, and we're so glad that you're here. I'll tell you about, like I said, our program, my program specifically that I'm working on. I'll tell you about Let It Be Us as a whole. We have Amy here tonight with us, who is a wonderful foster and adoptive parent. Amy has a lot of experience with youth with various medical and developmental needs. So we're going to hear a little bit from her tonight. And we're going to just talk generally about the licensing process and what that looks like to get started. But Amy, did you want to take a couple minutes just to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, my name is Amy, and I've been a foster parent for 4 years this time, being licensed. Then I was also licensed originally around like 2015. I did kind of about 3 or 4 years then as well. Took a little break in between. But I also, my background is I'm a nurse. I've been a nurse for 25 years, um, specializing in NICU, so neonatal intensive care unit. So that's kind of where I got my calling, I guess, as far as doing the special needs type of that area. So that's just really what I love to do is, take care of all those extra needs, and just something that, obviously I'm knowledgeable about and feel comfortable with. So right now I have 3 kids in my home. One I just adopted. Um, and then I have 2 other children that are on their way to adoption as well. And all 3 of them have some medical needs, some pretty significant. um, and then others, the youngest one, not as much, but still has some definitely special needs. So I can talk, if anyone has questions about that kind of stuff, at the end, I can talk a little bit more about that.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Amy. Glad you're here.
Thanks.
Yeah, we will get started. All right. So as I mentioned, Journey of 1,000 Miles begins with the first step, and here we are. So step number 1 is attending the webinar, which you guys are all doing tonight. I know there is going to be a poll coming to you eventually, if it's not already to you. I'm just curious about who is already licensed. Some of you may be licensed, some of you may be in the process. If you wouldn't mind just taking this poll, that would be fantastic, just so we can see where we're at with that. So after tonight, hopefully you will like what you have to hear from me about Let It Be Us. There's a lot of great things going on with us over here at Let It Be Us. Our next step, there will be a form for you to fill out. Kate is the one who's running all the magic behind the scenes for us. She's behind the Let It Be Us sticker there. So she's going to, as you can see, she just dropped the form in the chat. She'll also email it to you afterwards. We just want to get a basic bit of information about everyone and kind of see where you're at in the journey and what we can do to help you. Let It Be Us offers coaching for prospective and new foster parents. So that's a really fantastic service that they offer to make sure that everyone's getting the support that they need. And then step number 3, simple as that. There you are. You're now that special person in someone's life, showing up for these kiddos and helping make a huge difference in their lives. So hopefully after, like I said, after tonight's webinar, you'll be interested in taking more steps forward.
Aaron, I just want to chime in. We did get the poll results, and 20% are licensed, 20% are working on getting their license, and 60 are here to learn more.
Great. Fantastic. Well, welcome to everyone and wherever you are at in the journey, in your journey. So here is a little bit about Let It Be Us, a fantastic organization. I have to say, I'm just really excited to be a part of it. Let It Be Us as an organization just recently celebrated 10 years. It was founded in 2014 by Susan McConnell, who is the acting executive director still for Let It Be Us. She's really hands-on, and if you are with Let It Be Us for longer than about 5 minutes, you'll surely see her face or hear her voice somewhere. She's really actively involved in all the programs. We are a licensed child welfare agency, so we're licensed by DCFS to, we can also do placement. Recently, we also acquired the adoption listing service in Illinois. So that was previously housed within another agency. And now all of the children who are awaiting adoption in Illinois will be, that will be another resource that we are able to offer, is connection to those kiddos. I'm going to talk a little bit more about the Northwestern Medicine Grant in a little bit, but we wanted to thank Northwestern for the grant that made all of this possible. I guess I can just throw that in there now. It's part of a special families grant that Let It Be Us earned last year for the first time. So that funded the program that I am working with now, the Special Needs Recruitment and Placement Program. It was founded or funded because of a need in this area specifically. We know as a whole in Illinois and everywhere, we need lots of foster homes and foster parents who are willing to take in kiddos, but we're looking specifically with my program to find a solid group of foster families that are willing to take youth who have different developmental and medical needs and abilities. So that is what I am focusing on in my little corner of the world. And that is through a grant from Northwestern Medicine. All right. So here is just a general stat about child welfare in Illinois. You may or may not be familiar with some of these numbers. Approximately a little over 21,000 youth in care in Illinois. We're looking at about 40% of those kiddos are placed in traditionally licensed foster homes, which you all would qualify as, whether that's a traditional license that you end up holding, or if you do obtain a specialized license, those homes are going to be holding about 40% of our kiddos. 50% are actually placed with relative and kinship placements in Illinois. So those of you who are already licensed and on your way, you may already know this, but when a child first comes into care, that's kind of the first stop. We ask the biological parents if they have any family members who would be willing and able to take in the children, or fictive kin, which would be a close family friend, teacher, something like that, who's already familiar with the child. So that's that situation there. We have about 6% of the youth in residential or group homes. And that is one of the numbers that we're looking at reducing with this special needs program from the Special Families Grant. We want to make sure that youth who are placed in residential care because of medical complexities have the opportunity to be placed with a family. And then the other 3%, so that could be hospitalized, maybe part of the juvenile justice system, things like that. We have had a 30% increase in child welfare cases over the last 5 years. Which is a pretty astounding number. It's not that like it was a small number to begin with, but now more than ever, we really need these homes who are willing to welcome kiddos of all age, race, size, ability, things like that. So that's why you're here. All right, so I briefly mentioned this previously, and this might be repetitive for some of you, but just a quick word of how children end up here. If there's suspected abuse or neglect, the hotline is called. That's 1-800-25-ABUSE. So that can be, by any mandated reporter, nurses, doctors, teachers, social workers. They've really expanded the mandated reporter title, which I think is great. So coaches, religious group leaders, youth group leaders, things like that are all now under the mandated reporter umbrella, which is great because we need as many eyes on kiddos as we can have. So if someone suspects abuse or neglect, they call this hotline. The hotline caller will determine whether or not they have enough information to take the call. If they do, they will investigate the situation. And if it seems as if abuse or neglect has occurred, the child will be taken into custody, and then foster parents become the temporary caregivers. In Illinois, the goal is almost always return home initially. There's a very rare situation where it wouldn't be return home. So particularly in Illinois, that is something that foster parents need to be aware of, and that is kind of part of the struggle of foster parents, right? Is we're kind of asking you to wear out both sides of your heart, right? We need you to love and care for and advocate for these kiddos when they're in your home as if they're yours and they're going to be with you forever. But then we also need foster parents who can support the return home goal and very often end up being somewhat of a support and have connections to the child's biological family. And then very often, and Amy, I think you can maybe attest to this as well, if a child then does become available for adoption and they end up with the foster family, there's always the likelihood then that you can stay in touch with the family and things like that. So Amy, did you want to touch on that at all? Or I know that's a little bit of
Sure.
your.
Yeah, I think usually in most cases it's kind of encouraged to have some sort of contact with biological family, and I know that there's been studies and everything been done saying that that is beneficial to the children to be able to maintain some contact with their biological family. So that's always not always easy
Sure.
either.
Yeah.
Sometimes they can be very difficult to deal with. Sometimes you end up having great experiences with them.
Yeah.
Um, I've been lucky to have pretty much fairly good experiences with biological family, which has been really, really nice. I have um, foster kids that I had several years ago during my first licensing round that went back home or that were adopted. I still have contact with them. And that's awesome. Like I love being able to kind of follow them and see what's going on with them, years down the road. That doesn't always happen either, but it is nice when it can happen and you can still kind of be involved and the family trusts you, and even comes to you for help or for advice or, just even to come to a birthday party or something.
Yeah.
It's really nice to see the successes too.
Yes.
Um, so the kids that I have now, like I said, one is adopted already. Two are on the way to being adopted. Um, so the one that I have adopted, I there has been no family contact from the start. So that's it's kind of sad. And I do feel that sadness for him because I they just never really wanted to have any sort of contact with him. And the two that I have that are on their way to adoption, they're siblings, half siblings. And I have pretty much from the start, I've had contact with their biological great aunt, which she has adopted their two older sisters.
Okay.
And so they are able to grow up knowing their sisters and knowing their aunt. And then I also have contact with um, their maternal grandmother and great grandmother. So they've come to birthday parties. We've honestly gone on little mini weekend trips with them, stuff like that. And I think it's going to be great for my boys growing up, going forward, knowing their siblings, knowing
Yeah.
family. Their biological mom, we have had some contact with too. Um, she's unfortunately not been in a great place for most of the time that I've
Sure.
had them. At some point in the future where I'm really hoping and praying that she does kind of get her life in a better place, and maybe is able to have more of a relationship with them, but we'll see.
Sure.
It's always nice to have it and a
Yeah.
possibility, I guess.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And thank you for sharing that because I know you're living that on some fronts. And I, as a foster parent too, have had that experience of keeping in touch after they have gone home, and it's just really wonderful. So for those of
Yeah.
you who are at the beginning of your journey, when you take all the training that is required to become a foster parent, we do talk a lot about that. That's something I do. That's my other hat that I wear. I'm a foster parent trainer. So sometimes I kind of get tangential on those things and start talking about training stuff, which this is not the place for. So forgive me if that happens. But yeah, we definitely give throughout the training advice and tips and support on building that relationship. So if I just like to mention that because if this is your first time hearing much about foster care and you hear, reunification goals are mandatory and yikes, that opens up a whole can of worms that I wasn't aware of. So there's lots of training and talk about it as we go. So just wanted to mention that. And then, again, we have taglined here on the bottom again, we need homes for all ages and a variety of needs and abilities. Um, Thinking back to that last slide with the 30% uptick in the last 5 years, we just don't have enough homes, and we have kids sleeping in offices and, um, you know, not great things happening. So, again, so glad that you're here. All right. So, just a little bit more specifically about the program that I am working with, the Special Needs Recruitment and Placement Program. Um, Children with diverse medical and developmental needs have an additional stressor on them. Foster care in general is a trauma. Being removed from your family of origin, no matter the circumstance, is definitely a source of some trauma. Um, we know that unfortunately, kiddos who have these diverse medical and developmental needs and varied abilities, they are disproportionately more likely to experience abuse and neglect, and there's also a higher incidence of special needs in the foster care population. So, where 20% of the regular population has as different abilitied, youth in care have 50% have a special need identified. So there's a disproportionate numbers there. And then again, as you can see with the with our second couple of bullet points there, they have more difficulty finding a permanent home and a higher risk of mortality once they're in care. So those are some not great stats for these kiddos, and we're really looking to boost up supports for these guys so we can provide them with the happy childhood, the stability that they deserve. All right. So I mentioned earlier our program is funded by Northwestern Medicine. There's a number of different goals that we're looking to achieve in this grant period. The first and foremost is securing timely foster and or adoptive placement for these kiddos. We typically youth with special needs are more difficult to place, and we are looking to combat that, as I mentioned, by building up our database that we have at Let It Be Us so that we can have this solid group of people ready to go to take these kiddos. So we want to reduce the time that they are in between placements or in congregate group home settings, and we want them to be secure in a placement once they get there. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in a few slides, but we not only want to get them placed, but we want to get them placed in the right place the first time. So this grant specifically is looking at these few specific developmental and medical diversities. So autism, cerebral palsy, Down syndrome, deaf and hard of hearing, and also just the general medical complexities. So those are the specific needs and youth that we are looking to target and build up these resources for. This is available to foster parents who are already licensed, which I know is a good number of you, and those of you who are becoming licensed. And we're going to talk a little bit about what is required to host or to be a caregiver for a youth with these diverse needs. But I just off the cuff want to say it's really not that much different than what you're taking on to be just a traditional foster parent when you're looking at training and things like that. I know myself, before I learned a ton about it, I thought, and I know that Amy is hiding her superhero cape today, that we can't see it, but we know it's there. But it seemed like, oh my gosh, that while I would love to be that person, I don't know that I'm equipped to. And when you hear what is actually going to be required, it's much more attainable than you might think. All right. So why is it important? I mentioned on the last slide, we want to get these kiddos in the right place the first time. When we have kids that are placed in homes that are not prepared, not trained, not necessarily ready to take on a child with their level of need, can have a lot of negative impacts on everyone. The caregivers understandably can feel easily overwhelmed. They can feel frustrated and burnt out when they think, this is I'm going to laugh, and those of you who are licensed will too, because I hope you'll realize the tongue-in-cheekness here. But I'm doing this for the money, and now, oh my gosh, I have all of these things to do. There's no money to be had here. We know that's not a thing, but if you're thinking it's you're not prepared for it, and you have a child with whatever the needs may be, it's very easy to become burnout, overwhelmed, and that leads very often to a disruption, which is what we call when a child has to move from one foster home to another home. And sometimes that's unavoidable. There's definitely circumstances where it's in everyone's best interest for that to happen, but even in the best case scenarios, it has negative implications also for everyone. So the caregivers, if you got into this thinking, I'm here to make the positive change, and then you're not able to do that. You might feel like you failed or you let the child down, you're disappointed. It might be hard to consider taking in another home. Multiple disruptions add to the trauma for the kiddos and also can add for the caregivers to those feelings of frustration. So what we're trying to do is, again, enlist families who are either already trained and specialized and familiar with a variety of different needs, or people who are willing to be trained in those areas, so that we can alleviate some of that caregiver frustration and burnout, because we know we have to fill our own cups first. And if we can't do that, then it's going to, the trickle down isn't going to be great. So we want to support those caregivers. And then the next slide, we understandably will see that it's not great for the kids either. They're, like, as I mentioned, coming into foster care is traumatic in and of itself. When a child has repeated moves, that adds trauma upon trauma. Once, a child starts to feel like, well, if I'm only in each house for a few weeks or a few months and I know I'm going to be moving, why bother trying to make friends? Why bother showing up at school? Why bother trying to connect with the family? They feel, and understandably so, they can feel like, listen, I'm not going to waste my time trying to get to know people if I'm going to be moving. And the cumulative effects of that are going to have lifelong impacts on them, right? Those disjointed placements lead to interrupted services, which we know a lot of our kiddos in care need extra services, interruptions in education, and just those gaps in the the days of childhood that are kind of nothing, but also everything, right? Just the boring, long days that are childhood. When you're moving every 2 weeks and you never really feel at home, you're not experiencing that level of growth. So, and then very often we see increased behaviors from these kiddos when they're moving from home to home because, again, they've kind of given up. Why should I bother? Let me just go ahead and get right to it so that you can kick me out and I can get on to the next spot because I don't want to waste my time if I'm just going to be moving anyway. So um, we're looking to alleviate all of these potential difficulties by placing children in the right home the first time.
Can I add? I have something really quick just to
Yes,
add.
please.
Um, my first time around fostering, I had a toddler that came to me, and she was, I want to say, in like 6 or 7 homes before she came to me. And this baby was like not even a year and a half old. Um, and I think there were several relative placements first. So, they had tried putting her with some different aunts and, whoever else. But it kind of broke down to she was pretty much moved almost every month until she had come to me. And when we had started some early intervention services for therapies and everything, because of her delays, and she had medical stuff that from when she was born, like she had major heart surgery, which was all resolved for the most part. So she was healthy. She was, everything pretty good. Just had the history of kind of some medical stuff, but she was very delayed in a lot of her milestones. And, I just remember the therapist said something to me that I'll never forget. And, she said, when kids are moved like that, they don't know what's going on. They have no clue what is going on. And they basically are like constantly in like a fight or flight state. So they're not worried about learning how to stack blocks or, learning how to talk or walk or any of that stuff. That's not their concern. They're worried about, am I going to be safe? Am I going to
Yeah.
get fed? Like just even little toddlers, that are that young, it's like they know these things. And, um, and that just kind of stuck with me, because it was just like, well, of course, that's she's not walking yet, or of course she's not doing, because she's been in all these different homes, for basically almost her whole entire life, and she's, just thrown with strangers and doesn't know what's going on. So,
Sure.
that was just something that I've just always remembered, and, it honestly is what made me, get relicensed,
Okay.
to take my, 4-year-old is a baby that I took care of as his nurse in the NICU, and, that's really what made me decide to take him and foster him and get
Sure.
relicensed, was because of all of his special needs and medical needs. All I could think of was he's going to get bounced around, and
Sure.
he specifically, with all of his needs, like, he needs a stable home. He needs to be in those therapies, and he needs to not be interrupted, and
Sure.
have all these delays and things that would really, really help him. So,
Yeah.
that's just something that just has really always stuck with me.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, Amy, because you bring up a good point. Then conversely, what we see very often is once a kiddo, we hear like, oh, she's really delayed, she's behind, she's missing this, she's missing that. And then once she's in your home for 6 months, maybe she's, not, I don't mean her specifically, but,
Mhm.
once a little one is in a stable home, even for, a short amount of time, they really start catching up. And then you realize, like, oh, there aren't medical delays. The child, it was just situational. She was too busy worrying about safety, like you said, Amy, and when am I going to be fed next, to be thinking about, using her pincher grasp or whichever milestone we're thinking of. But yeah, just being that stable person, we see so much growth and, um, yeah,
Yeah,
thrive.
it makes a huge, huge difference.
Yeah. Thank you for saying that. All right. We're ready for the next one. All right. So we're going to do some checkpoints here and just see kind of where we're at. So, if you are interested in becoming a licensed foster parent and you're not already, some of you I know are, and some of you are on your way. If you have not yet begun the process, um, the form that you will complete that's been dropped in the chat and then also will be emailed to you by Kate after tonight. At Let It Be Us, we use licensing coaches, which, again, a fabulous resource, and will help you find an agency in your area to become licensed with. And we at Let It Be Us, we are not a licensing agency, so we don't do that. But Kathy, who is our licensing person, she's fantastic. She has connections throughout the state with the different agencies and, knows the areas and whatnot, where to go. Um, so, you decide which agency you would like to go with. You get licensed through that agency. And then, once you're licensed, you can be in our database at Let It Be Us. And you can be one of those families that we're calling, whether for traditional foster care placements or, if you are willing to be a special needs foster caregiver, then great. You can be on that list as well. There's not a specialized license required specifically to take um, all youth with special needs. There are going to be some kiddos who would require you to have a specialized license based on their own needs. But if you're like Amy and you come across this child and you're moved to, working with, youth with special needs is going to be my calling right now. And this is what would like to do with my foster care license. You don't have to obtain your specialized license from the get-go. And we'll talk a little bit about that, but there is a licensing, the licensing is a little more in depth when you have a specialized license, but you can get the training tailored to you and the child who is in your home that you are wanting to become specialized for. So it's a unique, it's not a cookie cutter license when you're looking to be specialized. But again, just because you decide you want to take a youth with special needs, it doesn't mean that you have to be licensed. There's plenty of kids who could come into your home that wouldn't need you to have a specialized license. So those are our next licensing steps. Just a few licensing requirements to consider for those of you who are at the beginning of your journey here. As you can see here, you have to be 21 years old. Any relationship status, you can be single, you can be in a partnership, you can be married, doesn't matter. You need to rent or own, or you don't have to own a home, you can rent or own an apartment. There is going to be a background check for everyone in your home. Um, and fingerprints for everyone over the age of 13. So backgrounds for 18 and up, fingerprints for 13 and up. I gotta move my thing here. Okay, you have to have, oh, and I got the background check thing switched. I'm sorry about that. So 13 years old and up, you have to be background checked. 18 and up, you have to be fingerprinted. You have to have at least one room available, and to have it be classified as a room, it has to have a window, it has to have a door. There's some specifics that relate to the space, but once you connect with an agency, they'll let you know exactly what's required. But it's not that you need an 8-bedroom house to become a foster caregiver. You also need to allow access to your home for visits. And this is going to be one of the biggest adjustments, I would say, for a life as a foster caregiver is just the number of people that are in and out of your home. I know in Amy's case, she's got therapists coming as well for the kiddos, but we've got caseworkers, we've got CASA, we've got the GAL. Then, whatever services are being provided to the child, very often they'll do those at home. So just a lot of people in and out of your home, and that has to be something that you're comfortable with. So those are just kind of the high points. Once you do connect with an agency, they'll let you know specifically what's required to become licensed. And I think Kate is it's either going to be in the chat or we're going to be coming up to it here, but there's a link to the licensing standards that you can just take a look at for yourself. Oh, yeah. Thanks, Kate. All right. So once you connect with that agency, so begins the 8 tons of paperwork that you'll be filling out. You'll get the finger cramp, that we're is so lovely from filling out so many pages. But there's just paperwork to be filled out from everyone in your home, and it covers a whole variety of information. You will need a medical evaluation and have your physician say that you are physically healthy enough to care for a child. Again, background check and fingerprinting. And this is all the starting info that you will be getting from the agency once you are connected with them. We are ready for that next slide. Yeah. Thank you, Kate. So yeah, the Rule 402, those are the licensing requirements that you can take a look at your leisure. That is going to tell you every last piece that needs to be complied with. Appropriate space for the capacity on your license. So it's literally down to the square footage and the number of bedrooms and the genders that you're going to be having in the same room and things like that. So there's a lot of different pieces that we're looking at. Your home does not have to be perfect by any stretch. It does have to be safe, clean, and appropriate. And I don't know, Amy, if you can speak to this as well, but early on, I was frantically cleaning every corner of every possible area I could reach before every visit. And then I realized they just need to see that the kiddos are taken care of, and that keeping a clean home is a very loose statement. So they were always telling me, don't sweat it. It's fine. So you don't have to be passing the white glove test or anything like that. Just keeping a safe space. If you have pets, they'll need to be up on all of their shots. You'll need to provide proof of rabies vaccines and all of that. And also you'll be asked about the temperament and things like that of the dogs, or pets, I should say. And then meeting all household family members as well. So they're just going to peek around the house and all of that, make sure that everything checks out in the home visit. It's really not as scary as it I made it out to be, and I know a lot of potential foster parents make it out to be in their mind, but they just want to make sure you can provide that spot for the kiddos. We're ready for that next slide. All right.
Sorry,
So,
it's just running on a little bit of a delay.
oh, that's okay. No worries. It could be me too. I just wanted to make sure I wasn't frozen. All right. So after you connect with the agency, you fill out the paperwork that's required. You will be required to complete the pre-service pride training. That is something that I train in my other job. So that is 39 hours of training, which sounds crazy to say it out loud like that. But there's a lot of info that we're covering. We give a lot of great tools to potential foster parents so that you can feel as well prepared as possible to welcome these kiddos into your home. There's online options and in-person options, depending on where you're at in the state. We're mostly still online at this point, but there are some options for in-person classes as well. As I mentioned, that's 39 hours. If you have a parenting partner, both of you would be required to complete the training, not just one. So we need to keep that in mind. And then there's, after the training will be 2 or more home visits required as well. So all of that together with these pieces of information or these documents that may need to be submitted: marriage license, pet vaccine records, driver's license and car insurance, a blueprint of your house, just to, make sure there's adequate exit points and whatnot. If you have well water, you will have to pass a well water inspection. Apartment documents, if you are renting, they'll need to, I think very often the landlord needs to consent, or there's some special stipulations with rentals. So you would just need to go over that with your licensing worker, and they'll be walking you through every step as well. So you don't have to keep all this in the back of your mind. So the home study, again, is when they are coming out and visiting, checking, to make sure that there's nothing nefarious hiding in the house. So each family member will be interviewed. I have 3 biological children myself. My youngest was 8 when we started the process. So, but even her, they asked her, what do you think about this? Are you comfortable with it? What are your thoughts and things like that, which is great. They want to hear how everyone's feeling in the home about it. Lots of questions about your parenting style, your background, just your parenting philosophy, things like that. It's a long visit where they're getting to know you and all that. Sometimes it's broken up over a couple of visits. And it allows you to also at that time share what you are looking for in terms of children that you feel you can welcome into your home. So you can give an age range, if you have a specific gender that you would prefer, or if you can only take a certain gender because of the number of bedrooms you have or something like that. If you're open to sibling sets, that's always a plus. If you're open to youth with developmental and medical diverse needs, hooray, that's again what I'm doing here. But you'll speak with your licensing worker and just let them know kind of exactly what you're comfortable with. And we encourage you to be honest about that. We don't want anyone feeling in over their heads. We know that's not the best way to maintain placement. So you'll have lots of time to talk about it and think about it during that process. All right, so I mentioned earlier a little bit the specialized licensure, what that looks like. It's not required for every child. It will be required in certain circumstances, but not every. Again, if you're interested in being a caregiver for youth with diverse medical and developmental needs, you'll be able to hear specifically about what would be required for the child. As I mentioned, what I think is a really unique and important piece of the specialized license is that it's tailored to the needs of the child that you're welcoming into your home. So, for example, if I was looking to welcome a child into my home who was, deaf or hard of hearing, I could, focus my training on learning ASL and adaptive resources and things like that. I wouldn't need to be learning about, caring for a child with, you know, cerebral palsy or something in a completely unrelated genre. I wouldn't have to be learning about that. I could be learning about things that would be specifically tailored to the kiddo coming into my home. The one thing that I didn't mention about the licensing piece is that you do have to do 16 hours of training over 4 years to renew your license. When you have a specialized license, that training is bumped up significantly. And I think it is 16 hours a year versus 16 hours over 4 years. But again, you can tailor the training to the specific needs and whatnot of the child in your home. If you do have a child who is specialized in your home, that would impact the capacity of your home. So typically, a child who has a specialized license would count as two children. So if your home was licensed for three and you had one child with a specialized license, they would count as two. So you would only be able to take one additional child to that child, but your licensing worker can go over all the details with that. But just something to keep in mind, um, that it does impact the overall capacity of your home. All right. And then after all of that, you've got your license for 4 years. Now here's the info that I mentioned on the last slide. Renewal is every 16 hours required every 4 years. Monitoring visits every 6 months. And they'll take a look at that time, make sure you have active car insurance. They'll, relook at your driver's license, checking to make sure that you're still complying with all those 402 standards. If you do need to let your licensing worker know if you're moving to a new home, if anyone moves in or out of your home, if you are, if your relationship status changes, that's something that they would need to know. Basically, just they want to know that you can continue to be responsible for the child's daily care and well-being. All right. Well, that brings us to the end of the information that I have prepared.
We do
We
have
have,
some questions.
yes. Thank you. Okay, thank you guys for participating in the chat. Newborns that are born underexposed, are they part of this group? So if the child is substance exposed, I'm not sure exactly what underexposed means, but yeah, babies who have been exposed in utero to different substances, they may or may not qualify for a specialized license. It just depends on each situation. They are not specifically part of the program that I am recruiting for. That's just those 5 specific ones that I'm looking for, but those are children that we help place and that we need foster parents who can support. Hopefully that helped answer that. Susan McConnell, what if I would like to ultimately adopt? Well, as I mentioned earlier, we have recently acquired the adoption listing service for all youth who are awaiting adoption in Illinois. So if your goal is adoption, that is something that Let It Be Us can help you achieve. We have children, we're placing children with all types of goals. As I mentioned, the initial goal in Illinois is almost always return home. So a lot of our children come with that goal of return home. We do have children who are pre-adoptive, which is has a different classification, and then children who have adoption as their goal. So now we are able to streamline that process for parents who are looking to adopt. we can connect directly to the adoption listing service. And we can, also place children wherever they're at in their journey and whatever their current goal is. If I care for a child with medical special needs, is there support that I receive? Will a nurse come to our house? So that is all a really good question, and really depends specifically on the child. So the DCFS will determine the level of care that the child needs. So there are going to be cases where there may be extra resources that come to the house. So it may be the child may qualify for nursing. All of our kiddos qualify for early intervention. So those are services that are provided within the home. There is going to be additional support from your agency if you have a specialized license, in terms of trainings, and there's funding for different opportunities like respite, which is like a paid babysitter that you can take advantage of. Depending on your agency, there are going to be a variety of resources that would be available potentially to you. Amy, I know this is something that you specifically have experience with. What type of services have you benefited from with your kiddos?
Sorry. Um, well, first of all, the caseworker comes out 3 times a month, to visit. So typically, with kids that are not specialized, they usually only visit once a month. So, the caseworker comes 3 times a month, and then through my agency, we have a nurse that works for the agency specifically, and she comes out once a month. Um, so she'll kind of keep track of everything that's going on with the kiddos' medical needs. And she's there for me. Our nurse from my agency happens to be wonderful. So she's there, I can text her anytime if I have questions. She's willing to go to appointments with me if I were to need or want her to, just, as an extra help or an extra, set of ears to kind of hear things. I've never actually had her do that, but I'm pretty comfortable with all the medical stuff. But for parents that may not be quite as comfortable with things, or may not understand everything that's being talked about during doctor visits, she is, willing to go to doctor's appointments. She is also kind of willing to do legwork for me. So if I'll say with the kids with medical needs, there's a lot of extra stuff kind of involved, just that you don't think of. So I'm on the phone a lot. Um, I'm calling around to, pharmacies or, to the doctors to get extra things for prescriptions or extra things we need. I'm calling to um equipment, for equipment, like the medical equipment companies for supplies or medical equipment that we need. And some of that stuff is just kind of time consuming.
Sure.
So the nurse is willing to help with that to kind of take a little bit of the load off of me. So I just need to let her know what I need.
Great.
Um, she also has gone with me to the school for IEP meetings.
Great.
Um, so that's kind of helpful because when I had first gone to my first IEP meeting with my preschooler, I'd never done an IEP before. So that was helpful to have her there to kind of, help questions and things like that that I maybe wouldn't have known to ask for. Um, let's
Great.
see what else.
And does your agency provide respite, Amy?
They do. Yeah. I think we get I think it's 15 hours of respite a month,
Okay.
per child. So,
Great.
um, yeah, so that's a little bit more than what you would get, with a typical, non-specialized child.
Sure.
I've also had my agency has been pretty good about doing some extra things. Like I had an issue with childcare. So, with my job when the kids were younger, I was working weekends mostly. So I was working 12-hour shifts as a nurse and on the weekends. And that's what worked with my schedule. I had been doing it before I even had the kids. But with them, it just worked better for me too, to be able to, have their appointments and all that stuff during the week. So I was having a really hard time finding childcare. So they helped me kind of figure things out, and it took a while. Not gonna lie, like it was not the easiest thing in the world, but they worked out a contract. So, where typically you would take the kids to a licensed daycare center, and they would have the contract with DCFS, and they would pay them directly for daycare. I wasn't able to do that on the weekend. So I was able to hire my own kind of daycare or child care person, and they worked with those people to kind of give them a pay that that worked out. So which was more than what they would typically pay for an unlicensed daycare person. And then I was able to train that person with the specific needs of my kids, which was nice because then I had someone that I felt comfortable with and kind of knew everything that was going on with the kids. So that's something that was a little like an extra, something that I was able to work with the agency to get help with. We also, with youth care, which is the insurance for foster kids, we have a case manager that for higher level medical kids, they really work kind of pretty closely with you. I think every foster child I think has a case manager from youth care,
Yeah.
um, but with the specialized kids, like they're in touch with you every month. And she specifically, our managed case manager, it has worked on me, worked on trying to get a special bed for one of my kids, like a safety bed, working on getting different things covered that that may not have necessarily been covered automatically. So, and I can call her with things. If something for whatever reason didn't get approved, I call her up and be like, well, can you figure this out for me? So I guess those are just kind of the main things that I feel like you get a little bit more assistance with, that is helpful. That's, because there's a lot of things that are very time consuming that doesn't involve actually caring for the kids. Kind of
Sure.
takes away.
Yeah, that's good to know. And so in your first round of licensure, you had just traditional kiddos, or did you have a mix?
Yeah, so the first round they were all traditional, none of them were specialized, but like I said, the one little girl did have the history of heart surgery and some medical stuff, but yeah, other than that they were all just regular status.
Yeah, well, I'm glad that you have had good luck then switching now that you've switched over to more specialized, finding the connections to those resources because they're there.
Yeah,
A lot of times they're there, but we feel like people aren't necessarily able to connect with them. But it's good
yeah.
to have had a good
They're
experience.
there, and one thing I have noticed is that they don't always tell you. Like
Mhm.
they're not really, there's no one that really is like, you have this and this and this and this available for you, you just kind of learn things as you go. So if I were to give advice, I would say, if you're thinking about doing specialized kids or medical complex kids, get get in some groups, or get to know some other foster parents that have already been doing it, and they are full of resources. Like I have a couple people that I've gotten in touch with that have been doing medical spec kids for many years, and they've told me stuff that I'm like, really? Like I didn't know that, or I didn't know that that
Yeah.
was available, or and
Yeah.
it's like I wish I would have known that earlier, so it's hard, it's unfortunate, but I feel like um even the caseworkers and all that, they just don't know all that. They're just not really well informed, I don't think, about specialized services either. So, um,
Yeah.
yeah, so I really think honestly that other foster parents are a great support to kind of point people in the right direction for things.
Yeah, that's really good advice. Also, no one can listen to you vent better than another foster parent, right? It's like
Very true.
when you're trying to vent to your friends who don't do this, they're like, but why? Why are you doing this?"
Yeah, and
Not helpful.
people don't understand, you know, they
Sure.
just don't
Yeah,
understand like what's involved and what you're doing and why you're so exhausted. And it's
sure.
I will say that it's all worth it. It's definitely something that is hard work and you really have to be committed for sure, but um it's it's just awesome. I mean, just to see the progress in these kids and, to be able to work on them with different things and all that. And I mean, there's a lot of tears involved too, but I mean, like my kids, they're just like the biggest joy. They're so happy. And um I always say that, kids that have gone through all of this trauma and all of these medical, horrible things that kids, that little should never have to go through all this stuff. Um, they they're just the happiest kids, and I don't know that they're resilient, and I don't
Sure.
know what it is, but they really are.
Thank you. Thanks for sharing that. And that's great advice to, start building your village now, right? If you're, no matter which direction you are going to go as a foster parent or adoptive parent, you need that village. So, yeah. Well, thank you all so much for your participation tonight. And if you have any other questions, feel free and put those in the chat. You'll also be able to connect with us after the webinar if you have any specific questions. You can reach out via the email or the form that Kate is sending you. Um, and I would be happy to answer any specific questions that I can. Amy, thank you so much for giving your firsthand experience. I know you're doing wonderful things over there, and I can't imagine how bedtime is going at your house with you here and not doing bedtime. So thank you for giving
They're
up that
downstairs
time.
going crazy right now.
Yes.
My son
Yeah.
is like, how long is your webinar last?
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Help, help. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you. And thank you everyone for giving your time to us tonight. And I hope to see more of you.
Thank you. Have a great night.
Thank you.